I remember the exact smell of that morning before I remember anything else. Burnt coffee and vanilla creamer. Too sweet, like someone trying a little too hard to make something feel comforting. It was still early, barely past 7, the kind of quiet suburban morning where everything looks clean on the outside. The sun was just starting to hit the windows of the kitchen, cutting through the blinds in long, thin stripes. My son's house always looked like something out of a catalog. White countertops, stainless steel appliances, everything in its place. Not like my house. Mine had history. This place had presentation. "Mom, you want coffee?" she called out from the kitchen before I even made it all the way down the stairs. Her voice was bright. Too bright. I already made a fresh pot. I paused halfway, my hand still on the railing. "Sure," I said, trying to sound normal, because that's what I had been doing for months, trying to sound normal around my daughter-in-law. Her name is Lauren. She's 32, polished, always put together in a way that feels intentional. Hair always done, nails always perfect, clothes that look casual but probably cost more than my entire outfit. When my son Daniel married her 3 years ago, I told myself I was lucky. She was educated, successful, came from a good family, the kind of woman people point to and say, he did well. And for a while, I believed that too. Until I started noticing things. Small things at first. The way she'd smile at me without really looking at me. The way her tone would shift just slightly when Daniel left the room. The way she'd correct me. Not directly, never openly, but with these subtle little comments that made me feel smaller, like I didn't quite belong in her world. I ignored it, because that's what you do when it's your son's marriage. You don't interfere. You don't create tension. You convince yourself it's just differences in personality. But then there were other things, moments that didn't sit right, like the time she accidentally threw away a stack of old documents I had brought over, papers that had nothing to do with her, or the time she insisted I must have misplaced a piece of jewelry I later found in a drawer I never use. Always small, always explainable, always just enough to make me question myself. By the time that morning came, I was already on edge around her, even if I couldn't fully explain why. I walked into the kitchen and she was standing there, leaning against the counter, holding out a mug like she'd been waiting for me. "Here," she said with a smile. "I made it the way you like." I took it, forcing a smile back. "Thanks." Our fingers brushed for a second. Her hand was cold. I don't know why I noticed that, but I did. Daniel was upstairs getting ready for work. He had an early meeting that day, something important, something he'd been stressed about all week. I was supposed to go with him, actually. He'd asked me the night before. "It's just a quick thing," he said. "You'll like the people there. Good networking." I hadn't been sure, but he insisted, so I agreed. Now, standing there in that perfect kitchen with Lauren watching me a little too closely, I suddenly didn't feel like going anywhere. "You ready for today?" she asked casually. "Yeah," I said, lifting the mug slightly. "Just need this first." She smiled again, but there was something behind it, something I couldn't quite name. "You should drink it while it's hot." The way she said it made something in my chest tighten. Not fear exactly, more like awareness. I took a small sip. It tasted fine, sweet, strong, normal, and yet I didn't take another. "Where's Daniel?" I asked, mostly to break the silence. "Upstairs," she said. "He'll be down in a minute." She didn't move, just stood there, watching me, waiting. That's when I realized she was watching to see if I'd drink it. Not in a casual way, in a focused way, like it mattered. I set the mug down on the counter. "Actually," I said, trying to sound offhand, "I might wait. My stomach's a little weird this morning." Her expression didn't change immediately, but I saw it, that split second where something flickered behind her eyes. Disappointment. It was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "Oh," she said lightly. "Okay." She turned away, busying herself with something at the sink, but the air in the room had shifted. I could feel it. Something wasn't right. I told myself I was overthinking, that I had been building this narrative in my head about her, and now everything she did felt suspicious. But then the maid walked in. Her name was Rosa. She'd been working for them for about a year. Quiet, efficient, always respectful. She didn't speak much English, but she understood enough. She nodded at me as she passed by. "Good morning." "Morning," I replied. She started wiping down the counter, moving closer to where my mug was sitting. Lauren glanced at her briefly, then looked away. And then it happened. Rosa reached for a cloth, her elbow brushing the mug just enough to send it tipping over. The coffee spilled across the counter, dripping down onto the floor. "Oh," I exclaimed, stepping back. "I'm so sorry," Rosa said quickly, grabbing a towel. Lauren turned around sharply. "What are you doing?" she snapped, her tone suddenly sharp in a way I had never heard before. Rosa froze for a second. "It was an accident," she said softly. Lauren's jaw tightened. "Be more careful," she said coldly. Something about the way she reacted felt wrong, too intense, too controlled. I looked down at the coffee spreading across the white countertop, brown against white, messy, out of place. And for some reason, my heart started pounding because I realized something. If Rosa hadn't knocked that mug over, I would have finished it. Lauren turned back to me, her expression softening again, like she was flipping a switch. "I'll make you another one," she said. "No," I said quickly, too quickly. We both noticed. "I mean, it's fine," I added, trying to recover. "I'll just grab something later." She studied me for a moment, longer than necessary. Then she nodded. "Okay." Daniel came downstairs a minute later, adjusting his tie, completely unaware of the tension that had just filled the room. "Ready?" he asked me. I glanced at Lauren. She was watching me again. That same look, that same quiet intensity. And suddenly, I didn't feel safe. Not in that house. Not with her standing there pretending everything was normal. "Actually," I said slowly, "I think I'll sit this one out." Daniel frowned. "What? Why?" "I just don't feel great," I said. "You go ahead." He hesitated, looking between me and Lauren. "You sure?" I nodded. "Yeah." Lauren smiled faintly. "I'll take care of her," she said. Something in my chest tightened again, but I forced a smile. "I'll be fine." Daniel gave me a quick hug, then grabbed his keys and headed out. The front door closed. And just like that, it was quiet again. Too quiet. I turned back to the kitchen. Lauren was already wiping up the last of the spilled coffee. Rosa had disappeared into the other room. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Lauren straightened up, tossing the towel into the sink. "You really should have had the coffee," she said softly, without looking at me. The words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because in that moment, something clicked into place in a way that terrified me. That wasn't concern. That wasn't casual conversation. That was something else. Something deliberate. And suddenly, I wasn't thinking about the spilled coffee anymore. I was thinking about what would have happened if it hadn't spilled. I didn't say anything right away after she said it. You really should have had the coffee. It just hung there between us, quiet and heavy, like something that wasn't supposed to be heard out loud. I tried to convince myself I was misreading it, that I was letting months of uneasiness twist something harmless into something darker. But my body didn't agree. My chest felt tight, my hands colder than they should have been, like instinct had already made a decision my mind was still catching up to. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice as even as I could. Lauren finally turned to look at me. For a second, just a second, she didn't smile. Then it was back. Smooth. Polished. "Nothing," she said lightly. "You said you weren't feeling well. Coffee might have helped." Might have helped. The way she said it felt wrong. Not in the words, but in the delivery, like she was covering something that had slipped out. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept it. "Yeah," I said. "Maybe." Silence again. Then she walked past me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something clean and expensive, but sharp underneath, like citrus over something bitter. "I have a call in a few minutes," she said casually. "I'll be upstairs if you need anything." I watched her walk out of the kitchen, heels soft against the hardwood, posture perfect as always. And then I was alone. For a second, I just stood there, staring at the spot where the coffee had spilled. Rosa had wiped it clean, but I could still see it in my head. The color, the way it spread. My eyes drifted to the sink. The mug was still there, a white ceramic cup with a thin gold rim, one of the good ones she only used when guests were over, or when she wanted things to look a certain way. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was months of small things finally adding up. But I walked over to the sink, picked up the mug, and looked inside. There was still a little bit of coffee left at the bottom. Not much, just enough to coat the surface. I brought it closer, smelled it. At first, it just smelled like coffee. Then something else, faint, bitter. Not the usual kind of bitter. something chemical. My stomach turned. I set the mug down quickly, my heart starting to race. No, that didn't make sense. I was imagining things. I had to be. I grabbed a clean spoon from the drawer, dipped it into what was left, and just stared at it for a second. My hand was shaking. "What are you doing?" The voice came from behind me, sharp enough to make me flinch. I turned. Lauren was standing in the doorway. I hadn't even heard her come back down. "Nothing," I said quickly, setting the spoon down. "Just cleaning up." Her eyes flicked to the mug, then back to me. There it was again, that look. Not confusion, not curiosity, awareness. "You don't have to do that," she said. "Rosa will take care of it." "I know," I replied. "I just have it." We stood there for a moment, the tension thick enough to feel. Then she stepped into the kitchen slowly. "You said you weren't feeling well," she said. "Maybe you should go lie down." The way she said it made it sound less like a suggestion and more like a direction. "I'm fine," I said. "Are you?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. I held her gaze. "Yeah." Another pause. Then she smiled again. "Okay." She walked past me, picked up the mug, and without hesitation, dumped the remaining coffee down the sink. Just like that. Gone. Too fast. Too intentional. "Fresh start," she said lightly, rinsing it out. I didn't respond, because now I was sure. Not completely, not with proof I could show anyone, but enough. Enough that something deep inside me was screaming. That coffee wasn't right, and she knew it. The question was, what exactly had been in it, and why? I waited until she went back upstairs. This time I made sure she actually stayed there. I listened for the door to close, for the faint sound of her voice starting up on what she had called a call. Then I moved, fast. I went straight to the trash. Rosa had already tiled up the bag from the kitchen bin, but it was still there, leaning against the cabinet, waiting to be taken out. I untied it with shaking hands, ignoring the smell, and started digging through it. Paper towels, food wrappers, nothing. Then I found it. A small, crumpled packet. White. No label. My fingers froze around it. I pulled it out slowly, trying to keep my breathing steady. It looked like the kind of packet you'd use for sugar or sweetener, except we didn't use those. Lauren always talked about how artificial sweeteners were toxic. Her word, not mine. So why was this here? I held it up, turning it over. No branding, no markings, just plain. Empty. My heart was pounding so hard now I could hear it in my ears. I glanced toward the stairs. Still quiet. I slipped the packet into my pocket. I didn't even fully think it through. I just knew I needed it. Needed something. Because if I was right, if I was even partially right, then this wasn't about tension or passive-aggressive comments or subtle control. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous. I retied the trash bag and stepped back, trying to make everything look untouched. Then I went to the living room and sat down, forcing myself to breathe. Think. Lauren was upstairs. Daniel was gone. Rosa was somewhere in the house. Probably cleaning. I needed to talk to someone. But who? Daniel? The thought hit me and immediately twisted in my chest. What would I even say? "Hey, your wife tried to poison me this morning, but I'm not totally sure, so don't overreact." It sounded insane. Even to me. And that was the problem. Lauren had spent years building this image. Perfect wife. Organized. Thoughtful. Put together. And me? I was the older mother. The one who sometimes forgot things. The one who had already been questioning small incidents. If I accused her without proof, I wouldn't just lose the argument. I'd lose Daniel. Or at least, I'd lose his trust. I couldn't risk that. Not yet. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the empty packet again. This was something. Not enough, but something. I stared at it, my mind racing, trying to figure out my next move. Because one thing was clear now. This wasn't over. That coffee, that wasn't a mistake. And Rosa spilling it, that wasn't random either. I thought about the way Lauren had snapped at her. Too sharp, too controlled, like something had gone wrong, like something had been interrupted. My stomach turned again. If that's true, then Rosa didn't just spill coffee. She stopped something meant for me.
And suddenly, sitting there in that quiet, perfect living room, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I wasn't just uncomfortable in that house. I wasn't just unwanted. I might have been in danger. I didn't leave the house right away. That's the part that still bothers me when I think back on it, how I stayed, sat there, holding that empty little packet in my hand like it was some kind of answer, when really it was just the beginning of something I wasn't ready to face. I kept telling myself I needed to be smart, careful, that walking out too fast might tip her off. But the truth is, I was also trying to calm myself down, trying to find a version of reality where I wasn't living in a house with a woman who might have just tried to poison me. I slipped the packet back into my pocket and sat there a while longer, listening. The house had its usual sounds: distant water running, the soft hum of the refrigerator, a faint murmur from upstairs, Lauren's voice, steady and composed like always, like nothing had happened. That's what got to me the most. There was no panic, no rushed phone call, no scrambling to fix a mistake. Just normal. Like she had already adjusted. Like she always adjusted. After maybe 10 minutes, I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself to move like everything was fine. I walked toward the hallway and almost ran into Rosa. She startled slightly when she saw me, then gave me a small, polite smile. "You okay?" she asked. Her English wasn't perfect, but it was enough. "I'm fine," I said automatically. Then I stopped, because I wasn't fine, and she knew something. I could feel it. "Rosa," I said, lowering my voice. "Can I ask you something?" She hesitated. Just a second. Then she nodded. "Yes." I glanced toward the stairs, making sure Lauren was still upstairs. Then I stepped a little closer. "The coffee this morning?" I said carefully. "When you spilled it, was it really an accident?" Her eyes changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. A flicker of something. Fear, maybe? Or recognition. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I make mistake." "That's not what I'm asking," I said, a little more firmly. She looked down, wringing her hand slightly. "I'm clumsy sometimes," she added. "Too fast, too rehearsed." "No, you're not," I said quietly. That made her look up at me. "You've been working here a year," I continued. "I've never seen you spill anything like that." She didn't respond, but her silence was louder than any answer. "Rosa," I said, softer now, "did you do it on purpose?" Her eyes darted toward the stairs, then back to me. "I don't want trouble," she whispered. "I'm not trying to get you in trouble," I said. "I just need to understand what happened." Another pause, longer this time. I could see the conflict in her face. Fear on one side, something else on the other. Finally, she leaned in just a little, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't drink that," she said. My heart skipped. "What?" I asked.
"You don't drink coffee she give you," Rosa repeated. My throat went dry. "Why?" She shook her head quickly. "I don't know." "You do know," I pressed. "You just don't want to say it." "I see things," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Little things, not right." "Like what?" She hesitated again. Then slowly, carefully, she said, "She put something in it." The world tilted. "Something?" I repeated. Rosa nodded, her eyes wide now. "This morning, I see. She think I not looking, but I see." My hand instinctively went to my pocket where the empty packet sat. "What did it look like?" I asked. "Small," she said, "like sugar, but not sugar." Exactly what I had found. My chest tightened. "Do you know what it was?" I asked. She shook her head again, more firmly this time. "No, but not good." Not good. That was enough. "Has she done this before?" I asked, the question coming out before I could stop it. Rosa's face went still. For a second, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she whispered, "I don't know." But something about the way she said it told me that wasn't entirely true. "You've seen her put things in food before?" I pushed. "No," she said quickly. "No, I don't know." She stepped back slightly, putting space between us. "I need to work," she added, her voice suddenly more distant. And just like that, the conversation was over. She walked past me, disappearing into the kitchen again, leaving me standing there with my heart racing and my thoughts spinning out of control. She put something in it. Not good. You don't drink that. The words echoed in my head, louder with each repetition. I moved back into the living room, my legs feeling weaker than before. This wasn't speculation anymore. This wasn't just a feeling. Someone else had seen it. Someone else had reacted.
Rosa hadn't just knocked over a cup of coffee. She had stopped me from drinking it on purpose, which meant Lauren had intended for me to. I sat down slowly, my mind trying to make sense of it. Why? That question kept coming back. Why would she do that? What did I do to her? I thought about every interaction we'd had over the years, every small tension, every subtle slight. None of it added up to this. This wasn't passive-aggressive. This wasn't control. This was something else, something darker. And then another thought hit me, harder than the first. Daniel, if she was willing to do something like this to me, what about him? My chest tightened again, sharper this time. No, I couldn't go there yet. I needed to think. I needed to be smart, because whatever this was, it wasn't impulsive. Lauren didn't do anything impulsively. She planned, she calculated, just like this morning. The coffee ready before I even came downstairs. The timing, the way she watched me. This wasn't the first step of something. This was part of something already in motion, and I had just stepped into it. I reached for my phone, my hands still unsteady. There was only one person I wanted to call, Daniel, but I didn't. Not yet, because I could already hear how that conversation would go. Mom, you're overthinking. Lauren would never do something like that. You don't have proof. And he'd be right. I didn't have proof. Not enough. Just a maid's whisper and an empty packet. That wasn't going to break the image Lauren had built. If anything, it would make me look paranoid, unstable, exactly the kind of person who wouldn't be believed.
I lowered the phone slowly. No, I needed more. Something real, something undeniable. Because if I was right, then this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about survival. I didn't tell Daniel that day, or the next, or the day after that. Every time I picked up my phone, I could hear his voice in my head before I even dialed. Calm, reasonable, protective of the life he had built with her. He would listen, sure, but he wouldn't hear me. Not without something solid. Not without proof that couldn't be explained away or softened into something harmless. And Lauren counted on that. That was the part that kept circling back in my mind. She didn't panic when the coffee spilled. She didn't scramble. She didn't overreact. She adjusted. Like someone who had already thought through every possible outcome, including this one. So I stayed. Not because I trusted her. Not because I felt safe. But because walking away without answers felt like stepping into a different kind of danger, one where I had no visibility at all. I needed to see more. I started small. I paid attention to everything. When she woke up, when she went to bed, how often she used the kitchen, what she kept in the cabinets versus what she kept out in the open, which drawers she locked, even though she never said they were locked. There was one drawer in particular, on the far right side of the kitchen island. It didn't have a visible lock, but I noticed the way she touched it. Not casually, not like the others. More deliberate, more aware. People don't guard things they don't care about. I waited 3 days before I tried anything. 3 days of acting normal. 3 days of eating what she made. Carefully, slowly, never finishing anything she handed me directly. 3 days of watching Rosa move around the house like a ghost, avoiding eye contact with me now, like she had already said too much. On the 4th morning, Lauren left early, earlier than usual. "I've got an off-site meeting," she said, grabbing her bag. "Might be late." I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "Okay." She paused by the door, looking at me for a second longer than necessary. "You're doing better?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, "just needed rest." She smiled. "Good." And then she was gone. The second I heard her car pull out of the driveway, something in my chest loosened, but only slightly. Enough to move. Rosa was upstairs cleaning one of the bedrooms. I could hear the vacuum faintly through the ceiling. I walked into the kitchen. Everything looked exactly the same. Perfect, clean, controlled. But now I saw it differently. Now I saw it as a place where something had been done deliberately. I went straight to that drawer, the one she treated differently. I pulled it open. It didn't move. Locked. Of course it was. I stood there for a second, staring at it, my mind racing. Then I turned and started opening other drawers. Utensils, towels, nothing, until I found it. A small key, tucked in the back of a drawer with miscellaneous things. Rubber bands, spare batteries, things no one pays attention to. It didn't look special, which is exactly why it was. I picked it up, my fingers tightening around it. For a second, I hesitated. This was a line. Once I crossed it, there was no going back to pretending I didn't know anything.
But that line had already been crossed the moment I saw her watching me drink that coffee. I went back to the lock drawer, slid the key in, turned it. A soft click. I pulled it open slowly.
Inside, everything was neatly arranged. Too neatly. Small containers, bottles, packets, some labeled, some not. My heart started pounding again. I reached in and picked up one of the unlabeled packets. It looked exactly like the one I had found in the trash. Same size, same texture. My hand started to shake. I set it back down and looked at the rest. There were at least 20 of them, maybe more. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a supply. I moved one of the containers aside and found a small bottle underneath. Prescription label. Not her name, not Daniel's. A name I didn't recognize. My chest tightened. Why would she have medication that didn't belong to anyone in the house? I turned the bottle slightly, trying to read the label. The name of the drug meant nothing to me, but the instructions did. Take with food or drink. My stomach dropped. I set the bottle back down carefully, like it might explode if I moved too fast. This wasn't vague anymore. This wasn't suspicion. This was real. She had something she was adding to food or drinks, something she had a supply of, and it wasn't prescribed to her. I took one of the packets, just one, slipped it into my pocket. Then I closed the drawer, locked it, and put the key back exactly where I found it. Everything had to look untouched, because now I knew, and I needed to stay one step ahead. I walked out of the kitchen just as Rosa came down the stairs. She froze when she saw me. For a second, we just looked at each other. "I'm going out," I said. She nodded quickly. "Okay." I grabbed my bag and left before I could second-guess myself. The air outside felt different, lighter but sharper, like I had stepped out of something contained into something unpredictable. I got into my car and just sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. Then I pulled the packet out of my pocket and looked at it again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I drove, straight across town. There's a small clinic I've been to before. Nothing fancy. The kind of place where you can walk in, ask questions, not draw too much attention. I went inside, my heart still racing, and asked to speak to someone. When they called me back, I didn't give them a full story. I couldn't. I just said I had something I needed identified. The nurse looked at me strangely but didn't ask too many questions. She took the packet, stepped out, and told me to wait. Those 10 minutes felt longer than the last 3 days combined. When she came back, her expression had changed. Not dramatically, but enough. "Where did you get this?" she asked. I swallowed. "Why?" I said. She hesitated. Then she said something that made everything inside me go cold. "This isn't something you should be ingesting without a prescription." My chest tightened. "What is it?" I asked. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. "It's a sedative," she said quietly. "Strong. In the wrong dosage, it can cause serious complications." Serious complications. The words echoed in my head. "How serious?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She held my gaze. "Hospital level serious," she said. I leaned back slightly, the weight of it hitting all at once. Sedative. Coffee. Drink it while it's hot. You really should have had the coffee. My hands went cold, because now there was no more doubt, no more gray area. Lauren hadn't just been doing something not right. She had been giving me something.
Something strong enough to put me in a hospital. Maybe worse. And if Rosa hadn't spilled that coffee, I closed my eyes for a second, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my chest. This wasn't about tension. This wasn't about control. This was intent, and I had just confirmed it. I opened my eyes again, staring at the nurse. "Can you tell how much was in there?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not without proper testing, but even small amounts can be dangerous, depending on the person." Dangerous. I nodded slowly. "Thank you," I said. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady again, and walked out of that clinic with one thing crystal clear in my mind. I couldn't wait anymore, because whatever Lauren had planned, it had already started, and if I stayed quiet any longer, I might not get another chance to stop it.